We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
The games that I'm going to show you are games that, in particular, are not only really fun for me, their theme is really cool, and most of them are even great games to play solo. They have a real good solo game. Well, let's start with the first one. The first one is Kepler 3042. Kepler 3042. This is the newest edition, and there is an older edition. And this game is a really intelligent game because you have to plan the entire game from the beginning with limited resources. So you have to accumulate some resources and at the same time try to discover exoplanets to travel to. And in the same process you have to try to terraform them or collect them. And I think there are only 15 rounds if I still remember. I'm going to check. I'm going to open the box. And it's also playable on Tabletopia, by the way. So I already played it on Tabletopia as well, because I needed to be an expert in handling Tabletopia, because I put the Lunatics game as well on Tabletopia, and I plan to put the expansion on Tabletopia as well after the campaign, because it really demands a lot of time putting all of them into Tabletopia. Now, I think, if I remember, how many rounds? 16 rounds. So you know there are 16 rounds, and so you have to try to plan all your actions and all your resource accumulations into these 14 actions. And they have a humongous game board. So it's really surprising what comes out of the box of a game board. I think it's nearly as big as the playmat that I have here in front of me. So Kepler 3042. If I saw the name Kepler, obviously I was thinking about exoplanets. The exoplanets that are being searched by a space telescope, and Kepler is a space telescope that is looking for exoplanets between Lyra and Cygnus, those constellations which are also in our board game. Now Kepler 3042. Now the 3042, I think that's the date. And if you look at the artwork, it's definitely a sci-fi. It's also when technology is that far ahead that we are able or capable to go to exoplanets, so to travel interstellar, which is still, well, first we have to go back to the moon, and then to Mars, and then to the other planets, and then maybe after generations, maybe hundreds of generations, we will travel interstellar. Okay, but this is number 6. I'm going to put number 6 here. Now my number 5. Actually, I don't need to explain a lot for this game, but it's very heavy because I have the legendary box. The first feeling, I really didn't really like it, but then afterwards I played like 3 more times with other groups, and I really fell in love with this game. The game mechanics. Well, the artwork, it didn't have to convince me the first time I saw it. The first thing I thought of the game when I looked at the artwork is it reminds me of a museum in St. Petersburg, because a lot of paintings remind me of Russian art from the 19th century. And actually it's a sci-fi / historical or alternative history of Russia, but there are also other factions and other countries inside the game. I have everything offside, so it really was a turn of heart after a couple of plays. And you know, even have the Rise of Furnace, really cool. And the Legendary box, actually a must have, because I have really everything of that game, even special resources, and this is a really good solo game as well. So I play this one solo, so I really like it. It's also playable on Tabletopia. It's also always good that you are able to play the digital game. Normally I like the board game, or board game players obviously like to play a board game and not a video game. But sometimes, you know, it's just a lot of work, and sometimes it's just a mess on the table. It helps if you really want to play a specific game, you can play it online. So Sight is on my number 5. Okay. The thing that influenced me here are, I think, the factions. That they're asymmetrical factions. Well, there are a lot of games with asymmetrical factions, but this game, and especially the design of the game, he has a ton of advice for Kickstarters, which I wasn't able to have implemented them all, because I'm working for the observatory as well. But it's really interesting to follow the designer, how he worked on it, and how he managed to tackle with the Kickstarter issues. So I'm a big admirer of the board game designer for what he does for the game board community. And well, I think his best game also won over my heart after a while. So the next game is number 4 is Marco Polo. I even have the expansion here. We've played with too many, I think. We played with 5, because it said you can play with 5, but I think too many players. But the first time I played this with a group, I discovered this game and I really fell in love with this game. It's really nice. And, well, the artwork, okay, but the theme is also cool, because it's about the Silk Road. It's about Kublai Khan and Marco Polo. And I've lived in Xi'an, in China, for 5 years, and so I know a lot about it. So, and also made a thesis at the university as a translator from Chinese to Dutch, and with an English introduction about armillary spheres and the development of armillary spheres in China. If you don't know what an armillary sphere is actually an astronomical instrument that was used before the telescopes were there. And now you can find the technical or the mechanics of a armillary sphere can be found in telescope mount. You can find them back in telescope mount. So if you've watched a video of the observatory where I turned the telescope, you can see that these wheels, well, if you look at the wheels and you look at the simplified instrument of Guo Jing, you will say there is a resemblance. And was I think the simplified instrument from the age of Kublai Khan. It's the same period of Kublai Khan, 12th century. Yes. See, I don't know, it's a long time ago that I wrote the thesis, but this really cool map. And the thing that I really love by this game are the contracts. I'm going to look for the contracts. Yes. These cardboards. Well, I would like to have this type of cardboards for the helmets for the Apollo guards. So if you stack them, if you stack the cards, it will look like a helmet popping out of the board game. And this, well, the mechanic is totally different, of course, but the way they are placed on the board and everything, it's amazing. And the artwork and all the pieces are made of wood and of cardboard or paper, no, cardboard. And yeah, I really like this game. But I think I like the base game more than the expansion, but still. I like Venice as well, you know, one of our top destinations. Very touristic, of course, but still very romantic. Now, Marco Polo was my number 4. So put it here. Terraforming Mars on number 3. My wife loves to play this game as well, so it's good for me. And it's also a very good solo game. You can play it solo. Well, Marco Polo, you cannot play it solo, but it's a good game. This game you can play solo. It's a very good, decent solo game, and there are a lot of expansions with it. I think there are Colonies is one of the latest expansion, and I really like the Colonies expansion as well. There are also different maps and everything. And as you can see, we really love the game because we even have the inserts to take it out. I think it's a real must if you play Terraforming Mars for the Venus expansion, or the Venus Next expansion, because you have these player boards where your cubes are stuck in. And we have these player boards as well for our game, and we want to punch them out all the holes so the cubes will stick inside the player board. I don't know, the original player boards are underneath, but we don't use the original player boards because, yeah, if we play it and we stumble or we change it, sometimes some things happens while you're not watching carefully, and then, well, I think most of you know the problem. If you use a lot of cubes to track your points and it is not stuck inside of the game, then some things happen. I think the punch holes, the idea with the punch holes, or a very good example of the punch holes, I think it's one of these dice games that you have to change. Dice Forge, I think it's that one. There you have a very simple player board, and they make these holes inside, so it's easy to put your cube in without, you know, having fear to shift them by accident. So, Terraforming Mars. This game has a unique way. The thing that I absolutely love about this game is the ways of winning. So the victory conditions that they have in the game is really cool. You can win by controlling 5 temples, regions with temples. You can win by having complete control of 2 regions. You can win by having defeated 3 monsters, or by controlling an entire building, a monument that you actually control for an entire 3 rounds. At the end of the 3rd round, the 4th round starts and you still are in control of the monument and you win. So there are 4 win conditions. I think it's very interesting. And this also gives a lot of possibilities for the asymmetrical build of the factions. Okay, this is also a must-have. The buildings Otherwise you have these cardboard temples, and they really have no place on the board with all those minis. Okay. Number one, absolute number one, is this one, Anachrony. This is, I think it's going to be very difficult to push this away. Yes, Mind Clash games, really absolutely fabulous. And as you can guess, I also have these beautiful inserts, and they have these beautiful minis as well. But actually, you have games with minis and minis. I think Marco Polo has not these minis, and there's a cool game, and Kepler as well. But this is really, yeah, it's because of the story about time traveling. It's absolutely cool, and the artwork is special. It's really, this game is made by Mind Clash Games, and Mind Clash Games, they seem to be able to make these alternative looking games and with alternative background, and is absolutely stunning. Like, you have these factions, you have these, I would call it, these are mechs, and so you can put your workers inside if they go out. What happened, it's the end of the world, an asteroid is going to come and impact the world. In the meantime, you can ask resources from the future, but while asking resources from the future, you have to pay back to avoid having distortions in time. And at the moment that the impact is there, you have to evacuate your faction. And it's a Euro style game, but with a real interesting mechanism. And so yeah, this is my absolute number one. But the thing that actually influenced me about this game is actually also the factions, but especially the story. I have this interesting story. You might think, yeah, most of the things just made up some stories, but it was so interesting. It's not so elaborate or detailed, but you know, I've made these cards with every faction, like the path of salvation, and then you can read background and all the specs of their mechs. And so I think it adds to the flavor of the game. So if I play this game with new players, you know, while I'm setting up the game, I'm giving these, I hand these out, you know, they choose a faction, and then they read the story while I prepare the game, which doesn't take long because it's all in these beautiful boxes. You just have to put out the box and open the board. And so it is a very good investment to have these inserts, and it adds to the game, you know, to have a background story and play with it. And this fabulous game is also playable on Tabletopia. I must say, it's not the same on Tabletopia, of course, but I'm delighted that it's also playable on Tabletopia because I really love this game. They have also a very good solo mechanism inside. I really love it. Anachrony. Absolute number one. Okay. So, what about this game? Well, obviously I'm not going to rank this game, but things that are asymmetrical are actually the astronomers. Astronomers are animals that actually represent continents because you're playing with a continent, and every animal has a certain astronomical instrument, like a Dobson telescope. If you don't know what a Dobson telescope is a tube with a mirror that magnifies your image if you're looking at the night sky. And there is also a telescope with a lens telescope, on a German mount or an equatorial mount here. From Africa, and then we have the South American toucan, and is sitting on a Newtonian telescope. This is a real replica of, well, this is the image of telescope that Newton built, the first mirror telescope technique with mirrors. And this is a European astronomer, a sheep, and is using actually a Kutter telescope built with several mirrors to prolong the focal length and so you have a sharp image of the moon. So actually a special telescope which is built to watch the moon. Kutter. Yes. There are other animals as well. The penguin from the South Pole has a sextant, and then you also have the panda from Asia with a Milry sphere. And then, is there another one? No, this is pretty much it. Oh yeah, we also have the kangaroo with a telescope. I think it's a regular telescope. It might be an alt-azimuth telescope, but I think the only alt-azimuth telescope here would be the Dobson and the Newton telescope. Yeah, all the others have a special equatorial mount or are different kind of instrument. Okay, so this is I've picked these animals to have also certain quality with the cultural background. So if you're looking at the special abilities of these continents that you're playing with, you will see make them asymmetrical as well. So this is one of the most interesting thing, is to have asymmetrical abilities, because each time you play the game you can play it totally differently. So you take another continent and it adds so much to the game if you have your own ability and you can focus on your own strength. I think it's really a must. These are the games of my top 6. Why not top 5? Well, because recently there was a game ramping inside my top 6 list, and I absolutely want to show Kepler because I really love that game as well, and it influenced the intelligence of the games, the scientific intelligence of timing and of planning. So that's why I wanted to include it, and I made it top 6. So I hope you enjoyed the movie. If you have any questions about my top list or about the game of Lunatics, don't hesitate to contact me or PM me through the Kickstarter page.